Hello, my name is Ken Andrews, founder, music director, and conductor of the Orchestra of Northern New York. Thank you for joining us for this segment of Tuesday Talks with a Maestro. Today's special guest is Roy Schaberg. Roy was a charter member of the horn section, principal horn, when Ani began in 1988. He stayed with the orchestra for
30
principal
years.
horn for 30 years and also offered, after he played principal, to sit on second horn. Boy, was I lucky when that happened. He was also he's an emeritus professor from the Crane School of Music, played with the Potsdam Brass Quintet and so many other ensembles. And I'm sure many of you have seen his bio, so many years when he played with the orchestra. It's just immense. And the other thing I would say about Roy that's very special is I have told this to so many people, I have never known another person to know so many people within his own profession. So many hornists all over the world, and he's respected all over the world for that. But before we talk about the orchestra, Roy, I'd love to talk about how you began your studies. I know a lot of students don't begin on horn. Sometimes they start on trumpet or something else. What was the first instrument that you began with?
Well, I started when I was 8 on piano, but going to the wind instruments, when you graduated the 6th grade, you went to a senior or junior high in town, which was like 2,000 students.
And where was this when you were
in Lansing, Michigan.
Lansing, Michigan.
And all of us wanted to play trumpet. So I signed up for trumpet. And there were like 30 or 40 of us all playing trumpet. They all wanted to be Harry James, play Flight of the Bumblebee. And somehow the junior high director conned me into switching to horn. That's how it all began.
Wow. So you started in a regular public school program?
Junior high.
Junior high.
With about 2,000 students there. It was a big city school.
Did you start right off with private lessons, or
no,
when did you start?
In the band.
In the band.
Yeah. And the C band.
And then did you take private lessons before you went to college, or?
I did later, yes, yeah, quite a bit.
Fantastic. And just briefly, you went, where were you in school for your training?
Lansing, Michigan, or?
In college.
Oh,
in college.
I went to Oberlin and Michigan State and Eastman, in that order.
It's an amazing group of schools, and no
good.
wonder you're so well trained. When did you know that you really wanted to go into music? When did it kind of hit you that you thought this is your calling?
Well, they had a contest in high school in the 11th grade, and I won a 2-week scholarship to Interlochen Band and a 2-week scholarship to orchestra. And that year I loved it. And they had what was called Bloody Thursdays, where you could challenge anyone else. I started out as third horn in the orchestra, and I challenged the first, and won. So, and that's when that kind of turned me on. I wanted to go into music, I thought.
Wow, what an illustrious career after that. You're a charter member of Ani from 1988, and I'm just curious, what are your reflections when you think of the way the orchestra started then and where it grew to later in the years?
Well, I'm amazed. I never thought we'd have people coming from Montreal, Ottawa, and Syracuse to join us. You know, it was just myself and my local students at the time in the beginning of the orchestra. And I never thought it was going to become what it is. I used to drive to Vermont to play. For 3 years I played there because there was no orchestra. And when we started, I quit Vermont and stayed here.
Yeah, it's interesting because in the early days, that was one of the main missions that when we began this, the idea was to offer an orchestra that people didn't have to travel, because a lot of our musicians traveled to Portland, Maine, or to Burlington, or to Syracuse to play, and that was one of the criteria that we were going after. I'm curious, you've performed all the positions in the horn section, and a lot of people think that the positions are just 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's just, well, who's best is on 1, and then 2, and 3, and 4. Could you maybe enlighten our listeners into what the roles of those positions are?
They're all important to the section. If you have a bad second horn, you're going to be a bad first horn. And the first horn player is required to play the big solos and the high stuff. Second horn is traditionally playing lower, but they better play in tune with the first horn. I think you want a second horn who can play in tune and balance. The third is, again, a high horn part, and expected to match the first in their solo work. The fourth horn is the bottom and the base of the whole section. And you want them all to be in tune and balanced, and it's a four-person thing.
I find it interesting. I remember when Mark Hartman's son came back to play with us for Beethoven's Ninth Symphony and was playing fourth horn. And a lot of people were probably very surprised that a lot of those big horn solos that they hear in Beethoven's Ninth Symphony are not on first horn, are they?
No.
They're on the fourth.
It's a great solo, yeah.
You did a lot of chamber playing, not only Potsdam Brass Quintet, but you played in the Potsdam Woodwind Quintet. We played together for 15, 16 years, and you played in so many other ensembles as well. How do you relate what you would do in chamber ensembles to what you do in orchestral playing? And do you have a preference?
Well, I'd have to say my preference would be the orchestra, because it shows off the horn in all its capability. Chamber music is great, and woodwind quintets are probably one of the hardest for the horn to balance the woodwinds. And I fortunately got to play in every place I taught. I played brass and woodwind quintets throughout my life, so it's a challenge.
I find it interesting. You played so many years and were a founding member with the Potsdam Brass Quintet, correct? Or it was started just before?
It started when I came.
It started when
Yeah,
you came.
yeah.
That's what I thought. They just had their 50th
Right,
anniversary
right.
a couple of years ago. I always call it the Ani brass sound because
Yeah.
I've always been so proud of that Ani brass sound. What do you attribute playing in that brass quintet, where those players are all members, principals, or members of this orchestra? How do you feel that really created that Ani brass sound?
Well, we all knew each other, and we knew if this person was playing a certain high note, they might be a little high or low, and we got to know each other. So that after many, many years of playing recitals and recruit trips and things like that, you got to know each other pretty well. And I think that helped in Ani.
Incredible. I'm just curious, when you were teaching at the Crane School of Music, and you're emeritus professor now, you had a huge studio, always did, and sent out students all over the world to professional roles, both in teaching and performing. But I'm curious, how did you find when you were teaching that huge studio and doing Ani and trying to practice and doing Potsdam Brass Quintet and so many other things, let alone director of Crane Youth Music at that time, and your home life, what did you find the difficulty to balance all this?
It was difficult. The one regret I have is I didn't go to a lot of my son and daughter's sporting events, because all our rehearsals were in the afternoons, and that's when they had their events. And so I missed out on that a little bit. And I think my son realized that.
Wow. And your son also is a wonderful, both of your kids
They're
were
both
musicians.
violinists.
Yeah.
My daughter's playing in the Asheville Symphony, and my son is in New Jersey and conducts a Randolph High School orchestra. And of course, right now it's very difficult. He had 90 strings, big string section, and they can't get together. They're too big.
Wow.
He did the attempt where you had people practice, and he put it all together for a performance, and it really came off quite well.
Oh, fabulous. That's, right now it's sort of the way of the future as we see things. I hope things get back very soon. I'm just curious, with all the years you've played with Ani and so much chamber playing, are there any, it's a tough question to ask any musician, but are there any particular composers that you've found that you really enjoy playing as a horn player?
Well, I love Mozart and Strauss. Mozart is sensitive and very beautiful. Strauss is bold and exotic, and you can be the hero of the orchestra.
That's a great combination to have. I mean, from the finesse to the full orchestra sound. Are there any, out of all the years we played together, and worked together in the orchestra. And I'm sure there are many, but are there specific moments that you remember that really?
There's one in particular.
What was that?
You might remember we hired John Zimmerman. I got to play with him and do the Telemann Concerto for Two Horns. And that was a great experience. And I, as a second horn, I had to play high Cs. He was playing high Es above that.
I remember that concert at Mary.
And we got it, yeah.
At St. Mary's.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Incredible.
That's probably the one that stands out the most in my
I
playing.
think at that concert we also did the water
music.
I
Yeah.
think we did the Handel water
Yeah.
music a long time ago.
Yeah.
But such a
I think
wonderful.
we did it at the Episcopal Church also.
Oh, maybe we did at that time.
Yeah.
Our first 2 years, I believe 3 years
Yeah.
of our Baroque concerts were at the Episcopal
Right,
Church, and then we
right,
moved over to
right.
St. Mary's.
Yeah. But that was a great concert and
Yeah.
probably one of my highlights of my career.
Well, I think that when I think of your playing and your contributions to the orchestra, let alone Crane and everything else.
In fact, I bought his
Many
horn. He had a Hill horn that I liked, and that's the horn I ended up playing with Ani. So I really admire John.
That's wonderful. You know, on a future visit, I hope we'll be able to visit again, because what I would love to talk to you about sometime when we really have more time is Crane Youth Music, because you were the founder of Crane Youth Music, and this has been one of the most special opportunities for youth, not only in Northern New York, but all throughout the state and other states as well. And I hope that sometime you'll come back, and I'd love to talk about how that CYM impacted not only Crane, but the Orchestra of Northern New York and so many other groups. That,
It was great.
it was
I'm
amazing.
most proud of that, of everything.
Oh, I appreciate you so much stopping by and talking with us today. And I want to thank our listeners for tuning in to Tuesday Talks with the Maestro, and I look forward to our next segment when we'll have another special guest for you from the Orchestra of Northern New York. Thank you.